Hello, and thank you for joining us for our fifth and final Money Monday webinar. This is a series of 5 financial webinars the Lake Park Public Library will host and are being presented by Money Management International, a nonprofit that provides consumers with free credit counseling and education. And tonight's speaker is Tara Alderete, and she will be talking about avoiding scams and identity theft. Tonight's participants will be learning the most common scams and how to protect their identity, money, and credit history. If you miss any of the webinars, all of them are available for viewing at the library's YouTube channel, which can be found by searching for Lake Park Public Library. And now I will hand it over to Tara.
All right, thank you, Judy. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tara Alderete. I am so excited to be doing this seminar for you tonight. This is one of my favorite topics to teach because it's pretty interactive. So if you haven't done so already, take 1 second, go grab a pen and maybe even a piece of paper. We're going to be answering some questions, taking a look at our own identity theft risks, some really fun stuff. All right, so our topic tonight is avoiding identity theft and scams. We're going to cover some really good information. We're going to talk about what identity theft is, some common identity theft practices, and then things you can do to safeguard your own information. We'll also talk about steps to take if you've been targeted by identity thieves or scammers, some common scams to be on the lookout for and strategies to help you avoid them. And then we're also going to take a look at some really good resources to assist you. Many of these are available online at the Federal Trade Commission website, IdentityTheft.gov, but we will take a closer look at those throughout the webinar. So I wanted to start out by kind of putting the subject of identity theft in perspective and sharing some recent statistics that we can see here. Identity Force suggests that 1 in 5 people have experienced identity theft in recent years or identity fraud. According to the Federal Trade Commission, almost 3 million consumer reports were taken in 2018, and these were up from the previous year. As you can imagine, particularly now and with COVID-19 and economic impact payments, we're also seeing scams and theft on the rise. The most common reports taken were imposter scams, debt collection, and identity theft. And for folks that experienced fraud, their average loss was $375. So I share these statistics with you because it's a really serious issue, and I think this kind of illustrates it. Unfortunately, in our current environment, like I said, with COVID-19 and just the rise of social media and everybody doing things online, of course, we're seeing a bump in fraud and scams against consumers. But the good news is you can take steps to safeguard against it. And that's what all the stuff we're talking about is today. So they say that knowledge is power. You've heard this phrase. And so I wanted to take a minute now to help you assess your level of risk. So what we've got here on the screen is an identity theft IQ. And so earlier I said if you had a moment to go ahead and grab a pen and a piece of paper and get ready. And we're going to take a look at our own identity theft risk. So what we'll do is go through these questions and assign points for each question that we say yes to. And then at the end, we'll score up our points or add up our points and see what our score is. So let's kind of walk through this together. The first, I receive several offers of pre-approved credit every week. If this is true, give yourself 5 points. Add another 5 points if you do not shred those offers using a crosscut shredder, something like that, before putting them in the trash. Give yourself 10 points if you carry your Social Security card in your wallet. If your state driver's license has your Social Security number printed on it, and you haven't asked the Department of Motor Vehicles to take that off or get a different number yet, take 10 points off, or give yourself 10 points, I'm sorry. I do not believe someone would break into my house to steal my personal information. If you answer true to this, give yourself 10 points. I do not use a firewall on my personal computer. 10 points if this is true. I have not ordered a copy of my credit reports for at least 2 years. Big one, 20 points if this is true. I use an unlocked open box at work or at home to drop off my outgoing mail. So, you know, just a regular mailbox at the bottom of your driveway, you put stuff in there. If that's true, give yourself 10 points. I do not have a P.O. box or a locked security mailbox. If you don't, give yourself 5 points. I carry my military ID in my purse or my wallet at all times, and it displays my social security number. If you're a military person and this is true, give yourself 10 points. I do not shred my banking and credit information when I throw it in the trash. 10 points if that's true. I throw away old credit and debit cards without shredding or cutting them up. If this is true, add 10 points. I provide my social security number whenever asked without asking why it's needed and how it'll be safeguarded. 10 points if this is true. And add 5 points if you provide it orally without checking to see who might be listening nearby. If you frequently leave your purse or wallet in the car, give yourself 10 points. If you're required to use your social security number at work as an employee ID or maybe at school as your student ID number, add 5 points. My social security number is printed on my employee badge that I wear at work or in public, or it's posted on my time card where others can see it each time I clock in and out at work. If this is true, add 10 points. If you have your social security number and or your driver's license number printed on your personal checks, add 10 points. If you're listed in any kind of a who's who guide, add 5 points. I carry my insurance, including Medicare, in my wallet, and either my social security number or that of my spouse is the same as the ID number. If that's true, add 10 points. I do not believe that people would root around in my trash looking for credit or financial information or for documents containing my social security number. If you answer true to this, give yourself 10 points. And then finally, I do not verify that all financial, meaning credit card or checking account statements, are accurate each month. You just kind of get them, look at them, and toss them. If that's true, add 10 points. All right, so at this point, you kind of go through, hopefully everybody's got their phone handy. I'm not, usually we all have our phone right there, and add up the number of points that you've given yourself. And then we take a look at the score. If you had 100 points or more, we can see here, recent surveys indicate that 8 to 9 million people are the victims of identity theft every year. So unfortunately, if you scored more than 100 points, you are at higher risk. So we recommend you take some of the steps that we'll talk about tonight to start, safeguarding your personal information a little bit tighter. If you scored 50 to 99 points, your odds of being victimized are about average. But if you scored 0 to 49 points, you have a high identity theft IQ, which means you're doing all the right things, and we applaud you. So keep up the great work and keep on keeping on. All right, so just kind of a fun activity, but also a really enlightening activity that I love to do at the beginning of this webinar. So that worksheet is included in the handouts. You can, do this with your significant other, your kids, your parents. Just kind of a good pulse on how well we're doing at safeguarding our personal information. So let's keep moving on. Now that we all have a better idea of our risk level, let's talk about identity theft. What is that? It defined is a crime where somebody gains unauthorized access to critical personal information like your social or your driver's license number, and they impersonate you. Once somebody can assume your identity, they can do a bunch of different things. They can apply for credit, they can make purchases, they can even obtain employment. Recently, we've heard about people trying to have medical procedures, right? Because then they're not going to be billed for it. So there's a lot of things that people can do once they assume your identity. In addition to those kinds of things, The imposter, the fraudster, can also create false identification credentials with your information. And then if they have that, they can do other things. One of them is establish a criminal history. And so this is, you know, it gets kind of scary, but, you know, these are all the worst case scenarios, things that folks could do. So as we proceed through the presentation, we have these myth busters, right? Kind of a true or false thing. And so this is the first one. So misconceptions about identity theft and fraud are common. Part of safeguarding your information is just knowing the facts. So if you think this statement is true or false, you just kind of make the decision. So thieves perpetrate the highest incident of identity theft online. True or false? Actually, it's false. Believe it or not, most times thieves are still getting our information the old-fashioned way. So they're taking it off a piece of, you know, paper that they see. They're watching over our shoulder for PIN, things like that. They're dumpster diving, looking in our trash. That's the traditional way. Or they're getting the information from you through a really convincing scam. And so we'll talk about those more in a minute. So we take a look at the common types of identity theft. In fact, you can see that the most common types could occur online. Most commonly, identity theft, when we see people taking someone's identity, it comes in the form of credit card fraud. So the number of incidents reported after their identity has been stolen, the highest number of incidents reported is to open new credit card accounts. And we kind of see what folks are using that identity information for beyond that. So let's talk a little bit about how somebody, an identity thief or an imposter, gets a hold of your information. Like I said earlier, you might be surprised to learn this, but oftentimes you, me, you know, us, we are the main source of sharing this information with an imposter, and they can be really good. They can be really good. If you're like most people, you keep a lot of your information, your personal documentation with you on your person. I'm talking about your driver's license, your credit cards, you know, just important information. And they're typically right there in your wallet or even sometimes on the back of your phone case. Another way that information can be obtained is through family or friends that have access to your records. If you're keeping bank statements, other tax forms, things out in the open, be careful of who's coming to your house that can see them. Believe it or not, a lot of times fraud occurs from somebody that we know. And also, like I said earlier, thieves are going through your mailbox, through your trash. They're really doing a lot of things like that as well, sort of physical ways that they grab our information. Besides this type of stuff, identity thieves are increasingly targeting people online, as you might imagine. As technology advances and we have all these additional conveniences, identity thieves also have increased access to our information. You know, we've heard recently, it seems in the past few years, like more and more and more about these data breaches at large corporations. I know several years ago there was one at even a credit reporting organization. And so most recently the gas pipeline, right? That was one that everybody sort of experienced. But identity thieves are tapping into things online, getting information, causing lots and lots of problems. So we want to be aware of some of the common scams that they use so that we can protect ourselves. So let's talk about those. First is phishing and pretexting. So this is where somebody might send you anonymous emails or text messages. You're like, what in the world is this? And they're hoping that you're going to open them. And then when you do, you're giving that hacker access to your information. A lot of times it looks like these messages come from reputable companies. And so there might be one little tiny thing that's off, but we don't notice it. And, you know, so we're quick to click on that and say, oh yeah, gosh, it looks like there was something wrong with my AT&T bill. Let me find out what that is. And then, you know, the damage is done. Good to be really careful. Other times, you might have done business with someone online. So this is what I was talking about earlier with like a data breach. The example that I used of the credit reporting agencies. So credit reporting agencies have access to tons of people's information. And so even if you did business with them, I think large retailers have also been victimized. And so, you know, they have your information. And so a hacker hacks into their system and then they get it. If somebody is tricked into downloading a virus or spyware on their computer, that's another way. If you get a text and it's a number, say, hey, can you call me back at a number you don't recognize? Be careful not to do that. It could compromise the data on your device. And I think more and more, we're all using our phones for different things. And so we want to be really careful. I want to share with you a personal example before we do this next Mythbuster. And this was actually an in-person example. And she was good. She was good. I do this presentation and we talk about financial wellness. You know, I do it professionally every single day. And I almost fell for this because she was so fast. I went through a drive-through and I had my order and I was paying and I had my debit card, and she said, she gives me the little thing, put your card in, and then she says to me, "What's your PIN number?" And I said, "Oh, and then I thought, that's odd, and I said, I'll type it in for you." She goes, no, just tell it to me. I said, no, I'm not telling you my PIN number. But it struck me because I'll tell you what, it was on the tip of my tongue. And then I realized, wait a second, no, I'm not going to tell you my PIN number. But she was so good and so quick and so fast that I almost just rattled it off. So you have to be really careful. Okay, let's get back to our next Mythbuster. So true or false? Most people discover they're victims of identity theft by monitoring their own accounts. If you answer true to this, you would be correct. Actually, most people do discover that they're victims by looking at their own stuff. Actually, a recent Federal Trade Commission survey said 52% of victims identified theft, these are words that get mixed up easily, by monitoring their own accounts or by checking out bank statements or looking at information on their credit report. So they were doing their own due diligence and found something that wasn't right. If you do become a victim of identity theft or fraud, the Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act provides some help for consumers who found themselves as a victim. This act requires credit bureaus to stop reporting fraudulent account information once you've established that you've been the victim of identity theft. So once that's been established, they'll stop reporting so that it doesn't continue to further harm your credit, and you can start to take steps to repair that damage. Creditors or businesses must also provide copies or records of fraudulent accounts or transactions that are related to them. And this documentation can really be beneficial, included in a police report or something like that, to help you prove your case. We've heard time and time again from people who've been victims of identity theft that one of the most challenging things is cleaning up that mess. The fight that folks had to go through to prove that they are in fact who they say they are and get the bad stuff taken off their record. So the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act really helps us to be able to prove our case and get that identity theft fixed. Consumers can also report accounts affected by identity theft directly to their creditors. So in addition to filing a police report and filing an identity theft complaint, which we'll look at in a minute, you can contact your creditors directly and say, even if, let's say you have a credit card at a certain retail store, even if that credit card wasn't used, you can still call that creditor and you can say, hey, look, I was recently the victim of identity theft or fraud. I want you to know that. Take steps to proactively close the account. You can also take steps to either add a fraud alert monitoring service on your credit report, or even better, add a freeze to your credit report. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about taking action if identity theft occurs. Now, on this website, it's IdentityTheft.gov, and this is a website from the Federal Trade Commission. What you'll see here is there's some really fantastic resources. And I'm going to tell you the truth, many of the handouts and information that goes with this class comes directly from this website, because really, we're not going to do a better job than the Federal Trade Commission does. And so if you go here to IdentityTheft.gov, you'll see some really great tools and resources. First and foremost, up here at the top of the screen, you'll see the option to get started, to report identity theft and get a recovery plan. Walk you through all the different steps you need to take to make sure that you're doing everything. And then it gives you some, like different things to do, right? Call the companies where you know fraud occurred, place a fraud alert on your credit reports and review those credit reports, report the identity theft to the FTC, and then what to do next. The other thing that I wanted to call to your attention is at the bottom of the page, you'll see different resources. Some of these, actually all of these, are really, really good, but some of them you might use more often than others. For example, the sample letter is very, very good. So this is like a sample letter to creditors. If you've been the victim of identity theft, you can just, send it to them so that you have something in writing to include if you need to. You'll also see what to do if your info is lost or stolen. It's just some of the different steps and tips and information that we talk about tonight. So IdentityTheft.gov. Okay, I have another myth buster for you. True or false? It can take up to a year or more to clear issues if you are a victim. You probably guessed already by just some of the stuff that we said earlier that this is in fact true. If you are the victim of identity theft or fraud, or if you have been in the past, be patient, because this really can take some time and work to clear up. But it's really the same as taking steps to make a positive impact on your credit score, right? You can do it. You absolutely can do it. It might not happen overnight, but you can most definitely clear up your good name and get back on the path. All right. So let's talk about 5 easy steps to help stop identity theft. Number 1, first and foremost, order your free credit reports and inspect them every year. If you have been watching this webinar series on a regular basis, this is coming as no surprise to you, because you've heard several times us at MMI saying it's really, really important that you look at your credit report every year and see what it says about you. So that's the first thing that you can do. As consumers, we are responsible for identifying things on our credit report that are not right and taking action to address them. And this is one of the places that we see it the most. I wanted to share another story with you, speaking about identity theft and credit reports and wrong information. So this is a personal thing that I started doing several years ago. I have been in the financial services industry either as a corporate trainer or talking about, education in communities for about the last 20 years. And early on in my career, we started to talk about information on credit reports that wasn't right. And so I started doing this sort of my own personal assessment, right? Experiment, if you will. And every time I would do a workshop talking about credit, I would ask the room, how many of you have looked at your credit report in the last 12 months? Hands would go up, and I'd say, okay, great. Those of you who have seen your credit report, was there anything on there that wasn't right, or it just wasn't yours? And it's not necessarily identity theft. Maybe there's just some information that was wrong. Your name was incorrect. I never have asked this question and haven't had at least one person say, oh yes, there was some information that didn't look quite right. So this is not a professional statistic, it's not official, but I will tell you that in my personal experience, we see this often. There's information that crops up on there that just kind of, it's a lot of information to contain. And so you have to make sure that we're looking at your credit report at least once a year. So to get a copy of your free credit report, you can visit www.annualcreditreport.com. Okay, so the second thing that you can do to help stop identity theft is to shred personal papers, receipts, and junk mail. I can't stress this enough. It is so tempting to get that and say, no, I'm not interested, rip, and throw it in the trash. Believe it or not, people will go through your trash to get that information, whether it's a pre-screened offer or it's a bank statement that you just kind of look at and say, yes, it's good. A receipt that might have sensitive information or financial information on there, anything. Just, invest in one of those little shredders. You can get them many places, big box stores, office stores, and shred anything that might contain personal information before you dispose of it. This is critical. Okay. Next thing that you can do is opt out of those pre-screened credit card offers. And so many of us have probably experienced this in the past. This is where we'll get something in the mail that says, congratulations, you have been pre-approved to receive blah, 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 blah. It's important to opt out of these pre-screened offers because something like that just makes it easier for an identity thief to grab and say, oh yes, this is in fact mine, right? All they have to do is share the information, send it in, change the address. These are things that happen. So to help you opt out, if you haven't done this already, two different resources. One, you can visit optoutprescreen.com. So it's just optoutprescreen.com. You can also call 888-5-OPT-OUT. And the actual number there is 888-567-8688. And you can opt out of those pre-screened credit card offers. And reduce the chance that fraudsters will intercept them. Okay, the next thing, step number 4 that we could do is just really closely, very much like the credit report, review those credit card and bank statements as soon as you get them, or if you receive them online, as soon as they're available. Really take the time to go through and look at those transactions and just make sure that everything looks accurate. In addition to helping you stop identity theft, this is also very important in helping you identify where you're spending your money for budgeting purposes, right? So it's a great thing to get in the habit of doing on a regular basis when those statements come in the mail or when they become available. And then last, but of course not least, step number 5 would be to just safeguard your personal information. And here we're talking about social security number, credit card numbers, other personal information. Be very diligent in never clicking links or opening emails from unknown sources. And when in doubt, verify by contacting the companies directly. So if you get, whether it's a phone call, an email, a text message, anything like that, like I said, it can be very, very convincing. Before you share any personal information or click links you're not familiar with, it is okay to verify that. So, if it's online, you just kind of step away from the solicitation and then use your own secure web browser to visit that known site. Let's say it's ABC Bank. The website is, abcbank.com with a secure HTTPS in front of it. You go there. If it's a phone call and this so-and-so calling from ABC Bank, we've got to verify some information. It is perfectly acceptable and right for you to say, thank you so much. Let me give you a call right back. And you call the known number for ABC Bank and then go through the verification process. I guarantee you, if it is a legitimate call or a legitimate solicitation, they won't mind you safeguarding your information this way. The other thing is, exercise caution when you're using social media. Make sure you're adjusting your settings to private. Check the security of online sites that you use on a regular basis. Make sure that the antivirus is up to date on your laptop, your tablet, your phone, all those different things. Whenever you step away, log out or lock your workstation. Put the identifier, the passcodes on your phones and mobile devices. Even if you're at home, if you have a landline, consider using an unlisted number, you know, different things like that. If you are traveling, might be a great idea to go down to the post office and say, hey, you know, I'm traveling, could you please hold my mail here? You know, get a PO box, different things like that. So all these things that we can do to safeguard our personal information can really, really help make a difference in stopping identity theft in their tracks. You take a moment to sort of think about some of the times you may have been at risk, or your information may have possibly been compromised. We have probably all been in a situation, or we could probably think of some, where either someone is calling, and like I said, these are real good. So sometimes it'll even be from an area code that's the same as your phone. So, you know, gosh, this might be an emergency. I better see what's going on. Or around tax time, you know, oftentimes we'll see scams and fraud involving that. I think another thing to really be careful about right now, particularly, is that, you know, we're still experiencing, even though we've got some good news on the horizon, we're still experiencing a lot of different changes and effects of COVID-19. I just read in the news today that parents of children will start to receive direct payments through the end of the year, or they can opt out. Rest assured that anytime assistance like this is available, thieves will, you know, try to take advantage of it. So I think particularly with things like that, your trusted resource is always going to be IRS.gov. You go to that site, you know that it's trusted, you know that it's safe, and then you know, do your own research from there. But be aware of what's going on in, you know, the world and what's happening in the news and things like that, because, you know, folks will try to take advantage of it. All right. Before we jump over, because I did want to open up that Federal Trade Commission website and just kind of take a look at some of the resources that are on there, I wanted to share some of the resources that I talked about with you today. So there are a couple of really good ones. IdentityTheft.gov can help you out with identity theft reports and recovery planning, in addition to Federal Trade Commission. And that's just ftc.gov/identity-theft. And then there's also the Identity Theft Resource Center, and this is available at idtheftcenter.org. This is a trusted organization where you can just get some good resources and information about current and recurring scams and fraud and steps you can take to protect your information. All right, so before we come back and summarize and sort of wrap up, I wanted to take a look at that website and just explore some of those resources together. Okay, here we are at IdentityTheft.gov, and this is familiar because we did see some screenshots of this site in the presentation. But I wanted to just kind of share some of these resources that you'll find on this site, because like I said, they can be really, really good. So first and foremost, we can start here to get started on reporting identity theft and building a path to recovery. And so you'll see here that there's just some questions that we start. You know, my information was exposed in a data breach. I could click here and begin my reporting process. The other thing I wanted to do is just kind of scroll down toward the bottom of the page. You can see here again, just another place to get to tell us what happens, answer those questions we just looked at, get a recovery plan, and then put it in action. Just another place to get there. But I also wanted to come down here and share the resources at the bottom. So like I said, another place to get there. Sample letters is a really good resource. And so depending on the type of identity theft or fraud you may have experienced or been exposed to, they've got different sample letters that are available for you to reach out to your service providers and credit card companies, debit cards, things like that. So you can kind of scroll through and see all the different sample letters that are available. Also gives you some information about things to include. And if we come down here, we see some additional warning signs of identity theft. So these are sort of things that we want to be on the lookout for. Great information here. If you see withdrawals from your bank account, of course, that you can't explain. But the other thing is, in addition to checking your statements and stuff like that, pay attention to things that you don't receive, right? So if you typically get your bank statement every month and you haven't seen it for a month or so, pay attention to that. If you're getting calls about debt collections that aren't yours, do a little bit more research into that and see. So we kind of see some different tips and strategies here. Your health plan rejects your legitimate medical claim because records show you've reached your benefit limits. Like I said earlier, even though we see the most reported instance of identity theft, to open credit card accounts, people are also using it for medical fraud. So, some great information here. If your information is lost or stolen, let's say your wallet or your purse is taken, or your information has been exposed, there's some great information based on the type of information that was exposed. And so one of the things I really love about this site and all these resources is because there are so many different ways that people can get a hold of our information, this site does a really good job of saying, if it was this, then let's do this. And then other stuff here, credit bureau contact information. It's going to link you and give you information to the 3 main credit reporting agencies, and then just some other helpful information and resources. This is a fantastic resource. So we'll see legal service programs, federal institutions, examination counsel to find somebody who regulates a bank or credit union if you're having trouble with them, postal service inspection, Department of Justice, so on and so forth. So just some really great information and resources. I can't stress enough when we're thinking about identity theft and fraud how much I love this website. So it's IdentityTheft.gov. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because I alluded to it earlier, is sort of this idea of freezing your credit. And so this is it's a good idea. It's a good strategy that you might want to take advantage of. So, I think we're fairly familiar with the idea, we talked about it a little bit earlier, of, credit monitoring services and things like that, where you get an alert if there's some kind of an activity that pops up that's not yours. If you wanted to take this one step further, you could put a freeze on your credit report, and you can do this with the credit reporting agencies directly. So, you visit Equifax.com, Experian.com, or TransUnion.com. Follow the prompts to add a credit freeze. And essentially what this does is it asks you to create either a code or something like that, so that you can give permission before somebody can apply or be approved for credit in your name, even you. So again, this serves kind of a dual purpose. Of course, the first thing it does is really, really protect you against people opening those accounts in the first place, because they won't be able to, unless you were to lift that freeze by putting in the security code you created or contacting the credit reporting agencies to lift that freeze for a certain amount of time. The other purpose that it serves, though, is just really kind of helping us avoid the temptation of applying for things that we don't need, and really taking the time to shop around strategically for the best interest rates or offers or repayment terms. And they say, okay, I'm purchasing a car. I'm going to shop ahead of time, and so I know that I'm going to be looking for the best rate within this period of, let's say, 48 hours or 72 hours. I've already done my research. I lift the freeze, apply for what I need to apply for, and then put it back on. So this can be a really, really good way for us to protect our credit. And actually, you can even add a freeze to your child's credit report, because believe it or not, we do see identity theft and fraud occur with children. So even under the age of 18 years old, folks will still get a hold of their personal information and use it to commit identity theft. All right, so let's scoot back to the presentation and wrap up. We have covered a lot today. We took an identity theft quiz to determine our own risk assessment level, and then think about some of the steps that we could take to protect ourselves. We also talked, of course, about the importance of checking our credit reports, bank statements on a regular basis, even like we just talked about, possibly adding a credit freeze to our credit reports to really sort of add that layer of protection. We also talked about the 5 steps to avoid identity theft. And like I said earlier, keep in mind that perpetrators are still largely getting information directly from us, the consumer. So we really have the ability to take steps to protect and safeguard our information against thieves and scammers. A quick disclaimer about today's presentation: it is designed for educational purposes and should never be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. If you do need investment advice, tax, or legal assistance, consult a professional. You can also visit us at Money Management International, so moneymanagement.org, to take advantage of some of our tools and resources. You can also visit moneymanagement.org/coronavirus. We have set up a site. It's still, like I said, it's still relevant information, especially as we see some of these additional benefits and payments become available. You can also call us anytime at 866-889-9347. If you're interested in taking a look at your personal financial situation, I know this webinar was focused largely on identity theft and fraud, but we do have counselors available that will walk through building a budget with you absolutely free. I'm helping you identify tools and resources to achieve your financial goals. We also have debt management plans available if you're trying to reduce debt, but you need a little bit of help working with your creditors to lower interest rates, and a variety of other educational and counseling services to help you effectively manage your finances. So again, visit us at moneymanagement.org. Give us a call at 866-889-9347, or you can visit us at learn.mmiuniversity.org to sign up for free e-learning courses, tools, articles, budgeting resources, and just some great information. So I thank you very, very much for your time tonight. I encourage everybody to be diligent about protecting and safeguarding their personal information to stop identity thieves and scammers in their tracks. Thank you so much, and thank you for attending this webinar series. It has been our absolute pleasure to hang out with the Lake Park Public Library, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara, and thank everybody for watching. This was the final episode or final webinar of our Money Mondays. And if you want to watch the other ones, the other webinars, you can find them on YouTube on our channel at the library, which is which you can find by searching Lake Park Public Library.